Hello, this final presentation is for the Environmental and Occupational Health class at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Disclaimer: this is a student presentation using a hypothetical scenario for environmental purposes. The presenter is a student at UMS, not a representative of the agency named in the following slides. The information contained herein does not necessarily reflect the views of said agency. Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Aurora Rodriguez and I will be presenting the pros and cons of GMOs and their labeling on behalf of the Arcasippi Farm Bureau. Thank you to the local community for attending the talk today. Now, here is the Arcasippi Farm Bureau team who worked on this presentation with me and made it possible for me to present to everyone here today. Thank you for everyone's help. Now, what are the topics we will be discussing in the presentation today? The three main topics we will be focusing on are the pros and cons of using GMOs and the labeling that is applied to GMO products. To be able to address the three previously mentioned topics, we must first discuss what are GMOs. To provide a clear and concise definition, I will read what a GMO is according to the National Human Genome Research Institute. A GMO is short for genetically modified organism, is a plant, animal, or microbe in which one or more changes have been made to the genome, typically using high-tech genetic engineering in an attempt to alter the characteristics of an organism. Genes can be introduced, enhanced, or deleted within a species, across species, or even across kingdoms. History. The journey of GMOs has been long and complicated. Since the start of human civilizations, humans have been looking for ways to manipulate crops to their advantage. It all started around 18,000 BC. Humans used traditional modification methods like selective breeding and crossbreeding to breed plants and animals with more desirable traits. Around 1866, Dr. Mendel, an Australian monk, breeds two different types of peas and identifies the basic process of genetics. After that, in 1922, the first hybrid corn is produced and sold commercially. Later on, in 1994, the first GMO produce created through genetic engineering, a GMO tomato, becomes available for sale after studies evaluated by the federal agencies proved it to be safe as a traditional bred tomato. This led on to, in the 1900s, the first wave of GMO products being created through genetic engineering becoming available to consumers. This was seen in items such as summer squash, soybeans, cotton, corn, papayas, tomatoes, and potatoes. Not all are still available for sale. Lastly, in the year around 2003, the World Health Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States developed international guidelines and standards to determine the safety of GMO foods. There, of course, are more new things that have occurred since these dates, but these are things that led to the beginning of the main route of GMOs. You can see more items in the figure to the right. So, what does the GMO process look like? Let me use this diagram to explain the general process. The agrobacterium cell contains a bacterial chromosome and a tumor-inducing plasmid, also known as T plasmid. The T plasmid is removed from the agrobacterium cell, and a restriction enzyme cleaves the tDNA restriction site. Next, foreign DNA, which is also cleaved by the same enzyme, is inserted into the tDNA at the site that was cleaved. The modified plasmid is then reinserted into the agrobacterium, and the bacterium inserts the tDNA, which now carries a foreign gene into the plant cell. The plant cell then is cultured and results in a new plant that has the foreign DNA trait. So, what are the pros and cons of using GMO products? Pros. Manufacturers use genetic modification to give foods desirable traits. Some potential advantages of GMOs include increased attractiveness to consumers, like apples and potatoes being less bruised or turning brown, enhanced flavor, having longer shelf life and therefore less waste, greater resistance to viruses and other diseases, which could lead to less waste and also increase food security, greater tolerance to herbicides, making it easier for farmers to control weeds, increased nutritional value, such as in food like the golden rice, which can boost the health of people with limited access to food. Greater resistance to insects. This allows farmers to reduce pesticide use. Ability to thrive in a harsh climate such as drought or heat. Ability to grow in salty soil. Growing plants that are more resistant to diseases spread by insects or viruses will likely result in higher yields for farmers and a more attractive produce. All these factors contribute to lowering costs for the consumer and can ensure that more people have access to quality food. Now we will discuss the cons. Genetically engineering food is relatively a new practice, which means the long-term effects on safety are not yet clear. Many concerns about the disadvantages relate to human health. Scientists have not yet shown that GMO foods are harmful to health, but research is ongoing. A few of the risks that have come up so far are allergic reactions. There is a small risk from GMO foods that can trigger an allergic reaction, but this is only happen if the genetic change triggers the production of an allergen. For example, when scientists have combined a gene from a Brazilian nut with a soybean, then someone who has a slight nut allergy could have an allergic reaction to the products made with the soybean. This discourages genetic engineers from using DNA from allergens unless they can prove that the gene itself does not cause the problem. Assessing the likelihood of GMO foods causing an allergic reaction in humans before a product reaches the market can help prevent this. Another issue that has arisen is cancer. There have been concerns that eating GMO foods contribute to the development of cancer by raising levels of potentially carcinogenic substances in the body. Another negative result has been antibacterial resistance. Some GMOs contain changes that make them resistant to certain antibiotics. So, in theory, the genes from these plants could enter humans or animals when they eat them, As a result, the person or animal could also develop antibiotic resistance. Even though the likelihood is very small, there are still health authorities have guidelines in place to prevent this. Another result that has occurred is changes in human DNA. Some people have also raised the fears of eating GMO food that could lead to genetic changes in human. However, most of the DNA found in food, whether GMO or not, is destroyed by cooking or breaks down before it reaches the large intestine. But there is no evidence that they have any impact on genetic makeup or human health. Lastly, another thing that results in the cons section is toxicity of body organs. In 2009, there was a research that showed GMO foods might impact the liver, kidney, pancreas, and reproductive system. Here are more figures that show the potential pros. In general, in the table 5, we see how the main way in which using GMO technology have impacted the farms by lowering the levels of pest damage, hence delivering higher yields. In table 7, we see how, based on the yield impacts, that there is a direct benefit to the income of farmers overall in their profits. Next, here are some cons. Statistically, it has been found that as the production and use of GMO products has increased throughout the years, even though the risk associated with GMO products have decreased, the number of government regulations and the cost of producing GMO products GMO producing produce has decreased. GMO regulations. The FDA in the United States, the Food, Drug, and Administration Trust Source regulates all foods from genetically engineered plants. They must meet the same safety requirements as non-GMO foods. Here are some rules. GMO ingredients require a disclosure statement in the form of a text statement, uniform symbol, or QR code. Excuse me. GMO labeling process. The US and the EU have two different approaches. The US has a more focus on the product, while the EU has a more focus on the process. As the figure on the left shows, GMO food companies submit the same type of scientific data to US and EU regulatory bodies for approval. 3 separate agencies in the US evaluate the risks of GMO foods, while a centralized approval process is established in the EU. Approval and labeling are stickler in the EU. The US approach, once again, to reiterate, is focused on the product, while the EU is focused on the process. Despite these differences, the two regulatory approaches are very similar. Scientific studies represent a systematic method of establishing GMO food safety, enabling policy conversions to consider other important aspects of GMO foods regulations, such as economics, ethics, and beyond. Confusion in GMO. Overall, we see a separation between GMO and non-GMO. In July 2016, federal legislation required that the U.S. Department of Agriculture create a national bioengineered food disclosure statement. The legislation specifies several elements. The products that may contain genetic engineering ingredients will need to carry a disclosure statement, such as a text or a QR code or a symbol. Some food that can be exempt from this labeling may be eggs, dairy, and meats. States are prohibited from enforcing any standards related to labeling whether foods were produced using bioengineer unless such standards are identical to the federal standards. Non-GMO labels. Voluntary labels stating that foods are non-GMO are widely available. Foods and food products that are certified as organic by the USDA National Organic Program meet a set standard of levels that prohibit all use of GMO technology in organic food production and processing. The most prevalent voluntary label that affirms use to communicate that their products are non-GMO is the non-GMO Project Verified label. This indicates that there's no more than 0.9% of GMO content within any product. Lastly, our summary. Here is the motto of my company, Arcasipi Farm Bureau. We believe in the economical production and nutritional benefits of GMO products statistically outweigh the potential negative outcomes associated with using these products. Here are all the sources we used to create this presentation. Here are a few more. Thank you for listening to my presentation, especially the local community group who attended today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the presentation, please feel free to contact me via phone or email. I will gladly get back to you as soon as possible. Once again, thank you for attending the presentation. Have a wonderful day.